Shatterpoint Saga, Episode 1, Part 2, Her Side. I didn't think my side of the story mattered. Not at first, because when something breaks, people don't ask why. They just listen to the sound it made. They heard the glass. They heard the shouting. They heard his version first. And once a story settles in someone's mind, it doesn't like being challenged. But silence has a weight to it, and I've been carrying mine for a long time. They say there's always 3 versions of the truth. His, hers, and the one that exists somewhere in between. Quiet, unfinished, waiting. This isn't an excuse. This isn't a confession meant to be forgiven. This is what it felt like, standing in the same room, watching everything slip, and realizing the moment things shattered wasn't the moment everyone thinks. This is my side. Shatterpoint Saga Episode 1, Part 2, Her Side. I already know what people think of me. I don't need to read the comments to feel it. I can hear it in the pauses, in the way people talk around my name instead of saying it. Cold, calculated, like I woke up one day and just decided to ruin everything. That version of me is convenient. It makes the story easier to tell. But nothing about what happened felt sudden from where I was standing. That's the part that keeps getting lost, because when he talks about it, everything sounds like it happened all at once. Like there was a single moment where I flipped a switch. But for me, it felt like something that had been building quietly for a long time. So quietly that by the time it finally broke the surface, I was already exhausted. I didn't start out unhappy. I didn't start out looking for a way out. I started out trying to make it work. That's what people don't understand about me. I don't give up easily. I stay longer than I should. I convince myself that if I just try harder, if I adjust a little more, things will settle. At first, I thought we balanced each other. He was intense, focused, always certain about what he thought and how he felt. And I was the one who smoothed things over. The one who kept the peace. The one who made things feel lighter. At least, that's how I remember it. But over time, that balance started to feel uneven. Every conversation felt like it carried weight. Like I had to think 3 steps ahead before I spoke. Not because he was cruel, but because he was sure. Sure of his perspective. Sure of his memory. Sure of how things were supposed to be. And when you're around that long enough, you start doubting your own reactions. I remember thinking, maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I'm reading into things. Maybe this is just what long relationships feel like. So I adjusted. I learned how to say it's fine and mean I don't have the energy for this. I learned how to let things go without ever actually letting them go. I learned how to swallow frustration and call it maturity. From the outside, it probably looked like things were calm, stable. But calm isn't the same as healthy. He says I pulled away, that I became distant. What he doesn't talk about is how unsafe it felt, to be honest. Not unsafe like I was afraid of him. Unsafe like every honest feeling turned into a debate. Like my emotions needed evidence. Like my exhaustion needed justification. And after a while, you stop trying to explain yourself. Not because you don't care, but because you're tired of feeling misunderstood. I didn't pull away to punish him. I pulled away to protect what little space I had left. There were moments where I tried to bring things up, gently. Moments where I tested the waters. And every time, it felt like I was asking permission to feel the way I felt. So I started keeping things to myself. Not secrets, thoughts, feelings, questions I didn't have answers for yet. That's how distance actually starts. Not with betrayal, with silence. He talks about the house like it changed overnight. But to me, that place had been heavy for a long time. Every argument stayed in the walls. Every unresolved conversation lingered. It felt like living inside unfinished sentences. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet, wondering how 2 people could be in the same room and feel so far apart. I didn't know how to fix it, and I didn't know how to leave without being the bad guy. People think leaving is the hardest part. For me, the hardest part was staying while slowly disappearing. I stopped sharing little things, stopped talking about my day, stopped imagining the future out loud. Those weren't accidents, they were signs. I just don't think he knew how to read them. And maybe I didn't know how to say them clearly enough. I'll admit that, but clarity is hard when you're afraid that no matter how you explain yourself, the outcome will be the same. That you'll still be misunderstood, still be labeled ungrateful, still be told you're overreacting. So I waited, and waiting looks a lot like guilt when you replay it later. From his side, there's a moment where everything shifted. For him, it was sudden. For me, it was the moment I realized I couldn't keep pretending. It wasn't relief, not really. It was fear mixed with a strange sense of calm. Because once something breaks that far, you know there's no easy way back. And no one prepares you for how lonely that realization feels. I didn't wake up thinking, I'm going to hurt him today. I woke up thinking, I don't recognize myself anymore, and that thought stayed with me. It followed me through the house, through conversations that felt rehearsed, through silences that felt louder than words. People want one clean reason, one clear mistake, but from where I was standing, it felt like 1,000 small moments stacking on top of each other, and I was tired of carrying them alone. I know people want a moment where I say, this is where I messed up. A clean confession, something easy to point to, but it didn't work like that. What happened wasn't one decision, it was a series of quiet compromises I kept making with myself. I started measuring my words before I said them, started deciding what was worth the reaction and what wasn't. At first, I told myself it was maturity, that every relationship has things you let slide. But over time, it started feeling less like compromise and more like erasing parts of myself. He says I should have spoken up sooner. What he doesn't understand is how many times I did speak up, just not loudly enough for it to count. When I tried to explain how I felt, the conversation would shift. It would turn into logic, into timelines, into who said what and when. And somewhere in there, my feelings stopped being the point. So I stopped trying to win arguments and focused on avoiding them. That's when people start calling you distant. What they don't see is how much energy it takes to constantly regulate yourself so nothing explodes. There's this idea that if someone is unhappy, they must be planning something. That distance always means betrayal. But distance can also mean disappointment. It can mean realizing the person you're with doesn't see you the way you thought they did. I started feeling more like a role than a person. The calm one, the understanding one, the one who didn't rock the boat. And when you live like that long enough, you stop recognizing which thoughts are yours and which ones you've learned to suppress. I didn't talk to him about everything going on in my head. Not because I was hiding something, but because I didn't know how to explain it without being told I was wrong for feeling it. I felt lonely in ways that didn't make sense on paper. We lived together, shared space, shared routines, but emotionally, it felt like we were orbiting the same place without ever actually meeting. There were moments when I caught myself feeling lighter around other people, not romantically at first, just understood. Like I didn't have to explain every reaction, like my words didn't need footnotes. And that scared me, because I didn't go looking for that feeling. It just happened when I stopped feeling it at home. I remember thinking, this is what it feels like to be heard. And instead of asking why I wasn't getting that from the person I lived with, I convinced myself it didn't matter, that I could handle it, that I shouldn't need so much. That was my mistake, because needs don't disappear just because you ignore them. They just find other ways to surface. He talks about trust like it's something that shattered all at once. From my side, it felt like something that slowly dissolved, not because of one betrayal, but because I stopped believing that being honest would change anything. I started compartmentalizing my life, what I shared, what I kept to myself, what I processed alone. And yes, I know how that sounds now. It sounds like excuses, but at the time, it felt like survival. I wasn't trying to replace him. I wasn't trying to build a secret life. I was trying to understand why I felt so disconnected while doing everything right. There were nights I sat with my thoughts and wondered if I was broken, if I just didn't know how to be satisfied. I questioned myself constantly. Am I asking for too much? Is this just what commitment feels like? Why do I feel guilty for wanting more emotional space? Those questions don't make you brave. They make you quiet. And quiet people don't get hurt until they leave. When things finally came to a head, people say I blindsided him. But I had been bracing myself for that moment for months. I knew the second it happened that there was no undoing it. Not because of what was said, but because of how I felt afterward. I didn't feel anger. I felt empty. And emptiness is harder to come back from than rage. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't celebrating. I was numb. Because even when something isn't working, ending it still feels like loss. And loss comes with guilt. I replay conversations now and hear things differently. Notice pauses I ignored. Moments where I chose silence instead of clarity. I won't pretend I handled everything well. Avoiding conflict didn't save us. It just delayed the fallout. But I need people to understand something. I didn't make choices because I didn't care. I made them because I didn't know how to keep caring without losing myself. And that line, between self-preservation and selfishness, is thinner than people want to admit. From the outside, it's easy to judge. From the inside, it feels impossible to navigate. I know my version doesn't match his in every place. That doesn't mean one of us is lying. It means we live the same relationship differently. And that's the part that makes this so uncomfortable. Because there isn't a clean villain. Just two people remembering the same story through completely different lenses. And I'm starting to realize something now that I didn't back then. Silence doesn't protect you. It just postpones the truth until it hurts more. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how people will hear this, about which parts they'll believe, and which parts they'll decide are excuses. Because once a story leaves your mouth, you don't control it anymore. People fill in the gaps with their own experiences, their own anger, their own memories. And I know there are gaps. There are things I didn't say when I should have. Moments I softened instead of confronting. Times I chose peace in the moment over honesty, in the long run. That's on me. But I want to talk about something people rarely mention. The way you can care about someone, and still feel like you're disappearing next to them. That's what it felt like toward the end. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't mapping out an exit. I was waking up every day asking myself the same quiet question. Is this who I'm becoming? Because the version of me in that house felt smaller, quieter, more cautious. I didn't laugh the same. I didn't speak freely. I weighed everything. And when you live like that long enough, you start confusing restraint with maturity. You tell yourself you're being reasonable, that you're choosing your battles, but really, you're just afraid of being misunderstood again. There were moments where I wanted to scream what I was feeling, moments where I wanted to say, I'm lonely even when you're right here. But the words never came out that way. Instead, they came out sideways, in silence, in distance, in withdrawal. And yes, looking back, I can see how that hurt him. I can see how confusing it must have been to watch me pull away without explanation. But confusion doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from two people speaking completely different emotional languages. I didn't think of myself as someone capable of causing that kind of pain. I still struggle with that, because in my mind, I wasn't acting out of malice. I was acting out of exhaustion. There's a difference, even if the result looks the same. When things finally ended, people assume I felt free, like I walked away lighter. But that's not what it felt like. It felt like grief. Grief for the version of us that might have existed if we'd understood each other better. Grief for the time invested. Grief for the person I thought I was supposed to be in that relationship. I questioned myself constantly after. Did I give up too soon? Did I stay too long? Did I mistake discomfort for incompatibility? Those questions don't go away just because the relationship ends. They follow you. I hear people say accountability means admitting you were wrong. But sometimes accountability is admitting you didn't know how to do better at the time. That you were operating with the tools you had, even if they weren't enough. I won't pretend I didn't make mistakes. Avoiding hard conversations was one of them. Assuming silence would protect us was another. And believing that I could manage everything internally without it spilling over. That might have been the biggest one. Because feelings don't stay contained. They leak. They show up in places you don't expect. And by the time I realized how far things had drifted, I didn't know how to pull them back without causing damage. So damage happened anyway. I know some people will hear this and decide I'm rewriting history, that I'm softening my role. But this is how it felt to live it. Not neat, not clear, not intentional in the way people want it to be. I didn't wake up one day and choose to be the person who broke everything. I became that person slowly, by trying not to break anything at all. And I understand now how dangerous that is, because avoiding discomfort doesn't spare anyone. It just delays the impact. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You can love someone, and still be wrong for each other. You can try your best, and still fail. And you can hurt someone deeply, without ever meaning to. I don't know what the right ending would have looked like. I just know the one we got was shaped by silence, fear, and two people who didn't know how to meet in the middle anymore. So when people ask me what really ended it, I don't give them a single moment. I tell them it was everything we didn't say. And what happened after that, the reactions, the fallout, the consequences. That's where the truth really shows itself. That's where intentions stop mattering, and outcomes take over. Next, the verdict. And that's where her version stops. Not because there's nothing left to say, but because some truths don't need defending. What follows isn't judgment. It's reflection. People want endings that feel clean. A verdict. A line drawn in the sand. But real stories don't end that way. They linger. They follow you into quiet rooms, into empty houses, into nights where the noise finally stops, and all that's left is memory? I don't know if telling my side changes anything. Maybe it doesn't. But stories don't disappear just because one voice spoke louder. They wait, they resurface. And sometimes the truth isn't about who was right or wrong. It's about what was broken, long before anyone noticed the cracks. This isn't the end. It's just the last moment before judgment. The verdict is coming.